Have y'all seen it? Have you seen Netflix's stock? It's up 5.21% today at the time of recording this. Tomorrow it might be a little bit different, but it's up over 5% today. It's done really well. And in the past month or so, it's up like 23%. It's doing pretty good. In the past 5 years, it's up over 500%. It's one of the best performing stocks over the past 5 years. And it's now trading at all-time highs. This is something that's surprising to some people that don't know the mechanics of how Netflix works. Netflix is a compounding monster. It has the massive flywheel that will continue to propel it above other media companies. This is why I have the biggest bet on Netflix as a subscription streaming company in the Story Fund. I think that it will outperform every other company. And Squid Game, this new smash hit, record-breaking series, is just one little part of this compounding machine that is Netflix. Now, in case you've been living under a rock, Squid Game is this new South Korean produced series. It's on Netflix, and it's about hundreds of cash-strapped individuals that enter into this contest in order to get this huge cash prize. The winner gets a huge cash prize, and you have to compete in children's games. The stakes are very high, though. If you lose at any part in these games at all, you die. And you die a very gruesome death. The series is grotesque. It is a very gory series, and it's not for the faint of heart. So keep that in mind if you're going to check it out. But Squid Game is well produced. It is, I think, a groundbreaking series. I believe that it will be a cult classic, and I think that a lot of the success in this series is justified. There's not a lot of series out that I think are, frankly, as intriguing or groundbreaking in different ways as Squid Game. Now, the series has had instantaneous success. The trailer alone, just the trailer on Netflix on YouTube, has received 19.4 million views. Compare that to any other series. Marvel ones, Disney ones. This beats out a lot of huge TV series, a lot of huge movies. 19.4 million views on a TV series on Netflix. That is an incredible amount of views. We also have the front page of the Journal reporting on Squid Game, saying Netflix's Squid Game is the dystopian hit no one wanted until everyone did. And I'll be going over what that title's referring to. Netflix's Squid Game phenomenon launches analyst debate over foreign impact. Now analysts are reassessing how to look at Netflix when it can produce these crossover series from South Korea that everybody in the world is watching. This isn't just appealing to South Koreans. This is appealing to everyone everywhere. Everybody's watching this series. Netflix sees target hike from Guggenheim after Squid Game scores. So now we have analysts doing price hikes based off this one series. This is what the analysts are now doing. This series is so popular in South Korea that the South Korean internet service provider, SK Broadband, is literally suing Netflix saying, hey, they're watching so much of your series that it's costing us a fortune to support the bandwidth. So we want you to help pay the bill. We're going to sue you to help pay for the bandwidth bill because everybody in our country is watching Squid Game. It says that Squid Game might be too popular. So I think given the fact that Squid Game is blowing up and it's everywhere right now, it's all over social media from TikTok to major news publications like the Wall Street Journal, that it's time that we look at Netflix again. And we do a little follow-up on the valuation I did earlier this year. In February 11th of 2021, I came out with my Netflix valuation, and I want to do a follow-up on this valuation and see if I would change anything or update anything with it. So we'll be going over all of that in this episode. Now, if you like this type of content, make sure to subscribe to the channel. You can also hit the like button. Before we get into Netflix specifically, I want to do a quick update on the Story Fund. Now, the Story Fund is my growth portfolio. I invest in companies like Netflix, Salesforce, Amazon, Google, and all different companies that I think have attributes that set them apart from the average company in the S&P 500. And I think that these companies will outperform the S&P 500. That's why I'm investing in them. Now, just to give a quick update on some different holdings. Alibaba so far has been one of my biggest losses. But I just want to mention this company that I've been bullish on and I've been buying as it falls also had an important update, I think, which is Charlie Munger recently increased his position in Alibaba by 82%. So as the stock came down, he increased his position, he added more to it. And this doesn't go against my expectations of what Charlie Munger would do. So that's a little update on Alibaba. We have a lot of other companies that are doing good so far. Most of them I'm in the green on. There's a couple that I've been losing pretty big on, which is Spotify and Alibaba. Both of those have dragged down my performance quite a bit. And then there's other ones that I'm pretty flat on, like Amazon, that I think will take off eventually, but I'm just giving these ones time. Right now, compared to the S&P 500, this is what it looks like. My portfolio is in blue, the S&P 500 is in red. As we had the tech company sell-off a couple days ago, maybe a week ago, my portfolio sold off along with it, and I traded down a little bit. Right now, I'm basically tied with the S&P 500, and that's how it's been for the past couple weeks. We've been very close. I'm fine with that. I think that my portfolio will perform really well. I think it has a very good chance of beating the S&P 500, but the future is very uncertain. There's no guarantees when you're trying to pick individual stocks. So that is it so far. I continue to invest in these companies. I continue to buy companies like Alibaba when they go on a dip, and Spotify. But my main holdings, which are the big tech companies, Adobe and Netflix, are the ones that I tend to put a lot more money in. I have quite a bit of capital invested into Netflix. Now, let's go ahead and jump into some of these articles here. Now, this is from the Wall Street Journal. They do a little bit of a history on Squid Game and a little bit of the background of what made this series so popular. They say that Netflix's Squid Game is the dystopian hit no one wanted until everyone did. And they define what they mean by that in the first paragraph. They say, South Korean's dystopian drama Squid Game might become Netflix's biggest hit ever, but for a decade, local studios rejected the fictionalized show's pitch as too grotesque and too unrealistic. So the script has been rejected by many other production companies. Netflix finally saw it and they decided to fund it and produce it. They say the premise revolves around financially broke adults playing traditional Korean children games on a secluded island. The losers die. A single winner emerges with a cash prize of about $40 million. Now, Squid Game, which made its debut September 17th, is a global phenomenon. The TikTok videos of it replicating children's games have gone viral, while online retailers are rushing to sell Squid Game Halloween costumes. So this has just created a lot of buzz everywhere. That's exactly what streaming companies want, is lots of buzz. Disney had massive buzz with the Mandalorian series. That one really blew up the Disney Plus service. And I think they're trying to do the same thing with the next Boba Fett series. But Netflix has this with Squid Game. They have buzz everywhere online. They say the show hit #1 in more than 90 countries, including the US, a surprise even of Netflix executives. So the success of this series has been overwhelming, and it's been unprecedented. They say, by every metric, the Korean survival drama is on pace to surpass Netflix's current record holders, Bridgerton and Lupin, in total volume of hours watched and the total number of subscribers who have tuned in to at least 2 minutes of the show. So most hours watched and most people that have watched at least a couple minutes. That's pretty incredible. They say it's still trending up. We've never seen anything grow as fast and aggressive as Squid Game. So here you have a series that's blowing up like crazy, and nobody else wanted to fund it. This is what I want to highlight as the massive advantage that Netflix has over other media companies. That advantage that I call their insurmountable lead, their massive advantage, is their budget. While these other studios rejected it, calling it fictionalized and grotesque and unrealistic, they're basically saying that, look, we don't have unlimited budget. We have to pick series that we know we're going to get a return on our investment. So we can't go out on a limb funding this series that who knows how it's going to be, right? We're going to stick to our little lawyer dramas, our little formulaic television shows that people watch every single day. They might not create a ton of buzz, but we know that we'll get viewers, and these won't be big flops. That's what most studios do. They don't have unlimited budgets, so they're constrained by their budget, which makes them unlikely to invest in high-risk long shots. Well, Netflix has something that these other studios don't. Netflix has $20 billion of cash flow flowing into their pockets every single year that they can funnel back into content. Netflix has a fire hose of money that can be used for content every single year, far more than any other studio. The only companies that could really even begin to compete are Amazon, Apple, and Disney. Those are really the only three. Every other company has a much smaller budget for content. So Netflix looks at the same thing. They look at the same script and they say, you know what? We'll fund it. We think this might be successful. It might be cool. It might be different than the normal television shows. And while we're funding this, we'll also fund our formulaic shows and the cooking shows and the documentaries and the TV series. We'll just fund all of it. But we can take the long shots because of our massive lead in subscribers and our massive budget. Netflix would have been fine if this show flopped. It wouldn't have been the end of Netflix. It wouldn't have been their destruction. If other production companies funded this and it was a flop, it would be devastating to them. It'd be a much bigger hit than it is to Netflix. So they have this huge advantage in being able to fund projects indiscriminately. Good, bad, everything in between. And that often leads to massive successes because Netflix will fund things that other people won't. And this is what I refer to when I say that Netflix has this flywheel that other companies simply do not have. Netflix has a lot of money. That money is used to fund a lot of content. Some of that content will turn out to be shows like Squid Game, which attract a lot of users. And because there's a lot of users, it gives Netflix more money. Because they have more money, they can fund more content. They can not only fund more content, but they can afford to miss. They can fund long shots, and sometimes they'll miss, sometimes they'll hit. But the hits pay off huge. The buzz of a show like Squid Game will pay off tenfold, 20-fold. Other companies would now pay a fortune to have this success, but Netflix owns it. And they're going to be coming out with season 2 and season 3, and you better believe that they're going to continue on with this success. This is the advantage of Netflix. This is their massive flywheel. So Netflix has this massive advantage with their very deep pockets and the $20 billion worth of cash flow that they can pour back into their TV series, their movies, and their documentaries. But I want to be clear here. That's not the only advantage that Netflix has. They have one other key advantage, which is their distribution network. Their 200 million plus subscribers, all geographically diversified all across the globe, makes it far more likely for them to produce a buzzworthy hit. Far more likely. People talk to each other. We're a global economy. There's TikTok, there's Facebook, there's YouTube. There's all these areas where people communicate and share with each other. And if you have a huge network, it makes it much more likely for something to become viral. And so Netflix has the deep pockets, but then they also have this massive network. For instance, if Squid Game was produced by a South Korean production company and put on a South Korean network, it may have never been the success that it is on Netflix. In fact, I'd be highly skeptical if it would have anywhere close to the amount of success, even being the exact same series, the exact same content. Netflix's distribution network, their 200 million subscribers, is part of what makes it successful. You can look at other examples of this. The TV series You. This is one about, well, it's about this creepy stalker guy that I don't want to get into it, but it's a very intriguing show. It's a little bit like Dexter, but more relationship focused. And this one was another massive success on Netflix. But this one was a little bit different because it didn't originate on Netflix like Squid Game. The series You had premiered on Lifetime, so the Lifetime network, in September, but its viewership was virtually non-existent. Roughly 650,000 people were tuning into each episode for the soapy stalker thriller. That's not enough views. For a show like You that has to be a produced show with actors and lots of money behind it, having 650,000 viewers is not a lot. I have YouTube videos that regularly get 50 to 100,000. I've had ones get 800,000 plus. So 650,000 views per episode for a professionally produced TV series is not a lot. Now, what happened with the series? Netflix eventually purchased it. And on Netflix's network, it all of a sudden had a buzz. It attained the same thing that Squid Game currently has. Netflix declared that You had drawn the sort of audience to make it a huge hit. The streaming service said that You was on track to be watched by more than 40 million households within its first 4 weeks on the service. So it went from 650,000 views per episode to 40 million households in the first 4 weeks. So Netflix doesn't just have one advantage. They don't only have the deep pockets to be able to fund endless amounts of content, and just by the law of average, some of it has to be massive successes, but they also have this massive network that makes it in and of itself more likely that some of that content will be buzzworthy. It will be like the Squid Game series. I really believe that if Squid Game was produced by a production company in South Korea, it probably would not have been as successful. It may have had success in South Korea, but it's unlikely it would have had the same global success it had on Netflix. Being on the service itself was important to its success. And being produced by Netflix was the outcome of Netflix having a lot of money. So I see Netflix still maintaining this massive success over other companies, and I really believe it's going to be tough to catch. I think that other companies are going to have a very difficult time catching up to Netflix. Now, like I said, earlier this year, I put together a Netflix valuation. This was me making my predictions and plugging in numbers to the story of Netflix to try to come to terms with some sort of evaluation on the company. I published this February 11th, and let's go ahead and just look at some of it here. I say at the start of 2018, Netflix had 104 million subscribers. Over the course of the 2 years, they roughly doubled that amount to 203 million subscribers. That's a 2-year annualized subscriber gain of 40%. So they gained a lot of subscribers in a 2-year period. On a more conservative estimate, I'm going to assume that Netflix will have an annualized subscriber gain of 15%. So no longer 40%, I'm reducing that to 15%. Here's 15% year-over-year subscriber growth for Netflix. So by the end of 2021, I think they'll have 233 million, for example. And this goes all the way to 2025. I say at the end of 2025, assuming a 15% annualized subscriber growth, Netflix will have 408 million subscribers. Let's take on an even more conservative estimate than this and assume that they'll only reach 350 million. So even if they don't hit that 15% growth, just at 350 million, this is where I get to my valuation. I go through the pricing of Netflix. I was able to look at their pricing structure, how much they've increased the price, and how much I'm predicting their prices will increase over time. And then I actually go in and look at the earnings per share. I look at the analyst projection, and I try to predict where their earnings per share will be at the end of 5 years. This is a lot of guesswork. When you're doing any type of long-term valuation, you're making a lot of assumptions. But again, I'm very bullish on Netflix continuing to keep their momentum. The downside, the big worry for investors, always with streaming companies, is the subscriber growth. And with Netflix, the big concern has been that the growth is slowing. The last couple quarters have been pretty soft, pretty slow subscriber growth. In fact, in the last quarter, they only gained like 2 million subscribers. Not a whole lot for Netflix. So this has been the big point of worry is, are they going to continue growing or are they going to level out? I'm not quite as concerned about that. I think that Netflix will continue to keep up at least a decent amount of momentum with subscriber growth. They're currently free cash flow positive. They're actually reducing the amount of shares outstanding. They're doing share buybacks. And this company will produce a lot of cash that I think will continually fund into other projects. Another thing that I highlighted when I was doing analysis on Netflix is that COVID did slow down their production a lot, and their content slate is more heavily weighted towards the end of this year, which we're at right now. We have 3 months more in this year. So I see Netflix's subscriber gains starting to speed back up the end of this year with a lot of their key series like You, the breakout success of Squid Games. They have Dave Chappelle's new stand-up coming out. They have a lot of bigger series coming out in just the next couple of months that I really think will bump up the subscriber growth over what it has been the last couple of quarters. So that's my assumption. We'll see in a couple of weeks when Netflix has their earnings report. They'll report their subscriber growth. It might come in a little bit slower. If it does, I'm still not too concerned about that. But as of right now, that is the big point of concern, is subscriber growth. Now, moving on with the valuation, I actually go on to lay out what I think the earnings per share will be for Netflix in 2025, as well as what I think their price to earnings multiple will be. Right now, Netflix trades with a forward PE of 65. So I'm assuming that as Netflix becomes bigger and bigger, that the PE that they trade at will become lower because they'll grow slower. So I assume that the PE ratio will come down from 65 to 27. That's baked into these assumptions is a contraction in their earnings multiple. I assume that with the growth of their earnings and becoming free cash flow positive, doing share buybacks, that their earnings per share in 2025 will be 33. So with a 33 earnings per share and a 27 forward multiple, that means that Netflix would trade at roughly $900 a share in 2025. Based on those estimates, that would be an 11% annualized return from today's price. Now, in my opinion, I think that this is a conservative estimate. I think that on the low end, I'll get around 10 or 11% returns. The high end, it could be much more. If Netflix really does cement its position as the global leader, even when all these competitors emerge trying to steal this market share, Netflix will be worth a lot more. If they're really able to grow to 400 million plus subscribers, the amount of free cash flow they'll have, the amount of money this company will generate will be astronomical. So I think that at the low end, the company will be worth around $900 a share, but I do believe that there's more upside than that. And that is my overall thesis on Netflix. So overall, that's my continued opinion on Netflix. I'm still very bullish on this company. I still have it as one of my key holdings in the Story Fund. And I'm excited to see where this stock takes me over the next 5 years. I think it's a great company. And I think that people undercut it and the success it's had continually. I see people saying that Netflix is over. Now there's Discovery and HBO and all these other streaming services. I don't think so. I think that Netflix has too big of an advantage to squander it at this point. So I'm going to still continue to invest in it. I think it will be market-beating returns over the next 5 years. But keep in mind, I can't see the future. It's very uncertain. Anything can happen. So I hope you enjoyed this video. That's all for now.